As a visionary female founder, what could you do with an extra $10,000, $50,000, $100,000? You can get that storefront location you've been eyeing for over a year. You know, the one with the heavy foot traffic? You could hire new staff members. You can get that software that's going to help you with your CRM processes. The possibilities are literally endless. The problem is you don't know where to start, and honestly, you don't have the time to research what grants are out there, what you're eligible for, when to apply, who to reach out to. As a busy CEO, time is money. And being a busy CEO myself, I understand the struggle. That is why I created the Funding with Foresight Matrix. This is the only database available that brings ease and access to money that you can use to grow your business. You have millions of dollars worth of opportunities that you can pursue as a business owner. This is the only industry categorized database available, and you don't want to miss out. It's a no fluff approach to grants research, and the waitlist has just launched. Check the show notes down below to be one of the first people to be made aware of when it actually drops. It has a year's worth of opportunities, and best of all, I'm going to be updating it regularly. That way you always have fresh grants to apply to as you implement this into your funding strategy. Go ahead, get yours down below in the show notes.
Visionary, thank you so much for joining me for today's super special episode. I am here with the absolute queen of time management. Of course, as you already know, I never like to introduce my guests because I can't do them justice. So I'm going to let my friend from across the seas, SJ, introduce herself.
Oh, thank you so much for your lovely words there. So I'm Sara Jane. Most people call me SJ, and we've been friends for it's about a year now, isn't it, that we've sort of jumped into the world of podcasting together. So as you can tell from my accent, I am from England. I live in the south of England. I live on a farm. And I am a former school teacher. So I think you guys call it like high school. I used to teach geography and PE. And I took the leap from, what was a very normal job, so to speak, that had good career prospects. And, I was ticking all the boxes and having great career progression and everything. And when I had my daughter, I sent her into daycare from sort of 7 a.m. till about 6 o'clock at night. She was 8 months old. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. What can I do to change the life that we lead? And I will say that I'm coming at you from a farm, and my other half is a farmer, and he works incredibly long hours, and it was fine when it was just the two of us. But as soon as we sort of wanted to have a family, I was really trying to figure out how I could get from my full-time teaching job to actually being at home more, but still actually having something for myself. And now I left teaching at the end of 2019 with the full intention of being a full-time personal trainer and having my own studio in my garden and all of the things. And I was really excited for it. And then COVID happened, didn't it? And God definitely had other plans for me. And not long after that, I then got into the world of podcasting. So that's a little bit about me.
So good. I love that evolution that is just so fluid, right? Everything just happens. So, when you're, I guess, when you're on the outside looking in and, when you're looking in retrospect, you're like, wow, I guess it did kind of make sense that I end up here, right? From teaching to personal fitness to podcasting, and you have so many other elements in place that we'll get into a little later, that just, it's been so fluid, that progression of your career, that sometimes I think people, they leave their jobs and they think kind of like you did, well, I'm going to get into personal training and this is kind of where I'm staying, this is my lane, without realizing that these are just elements that God puts together that will then create a bigger picture, a bigger mural, right? It's all just a compiling of things. So how is it that all of those different elements are now helping you in your current role as a podcaster and with your other business ventures?
I think the biggest skill that I had as a teacher, and we are going to talk about like being organized and time management and all of the things, was being able to organize my time really, really effectively, and being able to look at the bigger picture, being able to work with people as well. I love working with people. I really enjoyed working with children. And as a teacher, there's so many different elements to the work that I was doing. I wasn't necessarily like managing a whole school, but I was leading a department. So I had people that I was responsible for. I was looking after, I was responsible for children's education. I was managing a budget for my department. I was having to come up with new ideas for, like lessons and curriculum and being creative. And I think there's so often that when we are in a job, we don't recognize those skills that we have that are so transferable to other areas or other, the job that we might want to do is a bit different to where we were. But those skills that you have, I think it's important to look back and almost look back on what your job description is. If someone was to if you were to apply for that job again, what is it that you're actually doing? Because I think it's really easy to forget those skills that you have.
So good. And I say that because for myself, for example, when I started thinking about entrepreneurship on my own, separate to my husband, I was like, do I have what it takes? I've never, I've ran 2 successful barbershops in the past, but do I have what it takes to do this on my own without that support? What have I done? And to your point, I had to look back and I had to kind of really start picking out, but what are the skills? Stop thinking about the job title. What are the skills that you can now implement in your new role? Because even whether this is a side hustle that you are launching, Visionary, or this is a full-time business that you're building, there's skills that you're using right now or that you're developing right now that, like SJ said, are completely transferable. And so with that, I'm kind of going to segment into that management and organization piece of, okay, well, I have all of these things in place, right? I wear all of the hats. If you're new to my show, you probably don't know that I'm a mom of 4. I'm a university student. I have 2 businesses, one that I run by myself and one with my husband. And all that you're hearing right now is, where do you have the time? And so that's really what we're going to talk about here with SJ is, if you are like me, if you're nodding your head and you're like, yeah, that's me. I wear all the hats, but I don't seem to have the time, quote unquote, to build this thing that is going to give me the freedom to have a family, the freedom to travel, the freedom to choose my own schedule and really create the financial wealth, right, that you want. Well, you have to set the right foundations and have the right organization elements in place. And so SJ is going to teach us exactly how we can get started on doing that.
Okay, so I'll start with my story, to be honest with you. This transfer of teaching into the world of entrepreneurship, and I didn't just pack my bags and be like, right, that's it, I'm leaving teaching. It was a process, and it was a process over a year of me being able, I was fortunate enough to scale back my teaching. So I went part-time in my teaching job. And while I was doing the part-time teaching, I was then gaining the qualifications that I needed to be a fitness coach, a nutrition coach, a life coach, the qualifications that I have. And I was doing that. I mean, I don't have as many children as you do. I just have the one, but I was doing that with like, well, I had a baby. She was still a baby. She was super, super young. So it really was. And I think the first thing, and I'm sure you talk about this loads, was what was my why, like what was my motivation? Because on those days when you are so tired and you can barely get out of bed to go to your job and then come home, look after your children, and then sit down and then do some more work, when all you want to do is just go crawl into bed, in your mind you've always got to have this really kind of like clear picture of what is it that I am trying to achieve here? Where am I going with this and why am I doing it? And I think, and whilst I work in the world of health and fitness now, that is one of the things I always go into with my clients, is like, what do you want to achieve and why do you want to do it? So that you can get really, really clear on that goal. Because if you don't know that, you're not going to get there. You're not going to know on those hard days why you want to get out of bed and why you want to do that thing. It's so key and important before you even start thinking about time management. It's like, what do you want and why do you want it?
I love that. I think there's a TED talk that had come out 2016, 2015, and it was something like that, like the power of the why. And I remember that was such a buzz phrase at the time of like, what's your why? What's your why? And I just remember thinking, like, how do you get out of this space where your why is super shallow, right? It's not, and I'm sure you see it every single day with your fitness clients of like, well, I want to lose weight because summer's right around the corner and I want to look good. I want to fit into my bikini. How do you make sure that your why is something that has grit, is something that has hold to it? Can you tell my audience, how can you create a why or really dig deep enough to where that why is going to stick on those hard days?
Yeah, I think it's those moments, and I'll give you an example. So for me, it was those mornings where I was getting up with my daughter and I was packing her in the car and I was dropping her off at daycare, and I would sit in the car afterwards, and even think about it now, honestly, I could cry. I was sobbing, I was crying, and then I would go and pick her up after I'd finished work. I was tired, she was grumpy, she was crying, and it was just such hard work trying to like get her to go to bed and get her to go to sleep. And there were all of these things that she was doing during the day that was happening in her daycare, and they were sending them like on the app that they do. And every time I looked at that, I cried because I was missing all of this stuff. So for me, I think that kind of like digging into that grit, as you were saying, it's getting emotional with it. Like, what is the thing that makes you kind of want to cry, or, really, really kind of like stabs you in the heart when you think about it? It's like, what is that thing that I guess almost causes you pain? But I don't mean, like in a bad way, but what is that kind of like emotional thing that really, really is right in the pit of your stomach that is going to drive you to do that thing? And just going back to what you were saying with my clients, when they say to me that they want to lose weight, everybody comes to me and says that they want to lose weight. But actually, if we dig into it, and I always do this, like I always do this in our first session before we even start working out, I am always like digging into this because I need to know this stuff to be able to train them. So for example, one lady, she came to me because she wanted to lose weight. She was overweight, but her real reason was she wanted to get on an aeroplane and travel to the US. She wanted to go to Vegas, and she wanted to get on a plane and not walk down the aisle and have her body bumping into people. And she didn't want to ask that stewardess for the extra lap out because she didn't want to be embarrassed. And when she thought about the embarrassment of that situation, that emotion was the thing that was going to get her out of bed in the mornings and do the workouts.
I don't know how you top that. Honestly, that's such a good story. That's honestly, and of course, it's hard for you to get vulnerable. It's hard for you to get emotional. At least for me, I'm that person that when people start to cry, SJ, I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it. But to your point, I think that you have to really get to that piece in your life that really makes you uncomfortable. And yeah, if you got to cry, girl, cry it out. Cry it out. That's that piece. So what would be step number 2 after you understand your why, after you have your reason? Where do you go from there?
Okay, so the way that I'll talk about this in terms of the way that I work with people, because I don't work as just a personal trainer, I'm kind of organizing them before we even start down the personal training route. So they have a goal in mind. We've identified the goal, we've identified the why, and we've got to reverse engineer that. And we've got to figure out, okay, so what is it that you need to do to get there? So although I'm like health and fitness, you can apply this to anything. It's a strategy that you can use for all things. So it's like, okay, let's unpack this. So in the world of health and fitness, if they're coming to me and they're saying that they want to lose weight or they want to run like a 10K or something like that, we're then figuring out how much time. And I really like to chunk like a goal or a why into 3 months. So we can break it into kind of like a whole year as well. And I think the 3 months is like enough time for you to get settled in a new routine, to build and grow, but actually to see a result at the end of that period. And I really like to work, and I work with my clients on this 3-month basis. So we unpack, what is it that you've got to do over the next 3 months to hit that goal? And then the next thing, and obviously the what you've got to do, is where I teach them the health and the fitness and the healthy eating. But the key thing, because we all say this all the time, is like, I don't have time. I don't have time for this. How am I going to do this? Where do I put the time in the day? And all of my clients before, when I first started personal training, I was doing that. Okay, well, you show up and do your workout and then off you go for the week and come back and nobody's done their workout. And I was just like, well, they're not going to get results. Like, I'm not doing my job properly. And that was when I then started to incorporate this 3-step process that I'm sort of unpacking with you of, right, I'm going to dig into your schedule. You're going to show me your diary. You're going to show me how you're spending your time, almost a little bit teacher-like, I guess. But then we're going to work out, where is it you're going to fit these steps that you need to take. Is it your 3 workouts a week, your 5 workouts a week? Where are you going to put your meal planning? So I basically like show them how to organize their time so that they can take the steps that they need to reach their health and fitness goals. Because otherwise people will show up for that one workout every week with me, but they won't do anything in between.
I love that. I love the 90 days to see a result. So my husband, actually, I've been pestering him for months, really for years, to go see a doctor. And he called, and of course, no one has anything. But this doctor tells him, I need to know, first and foremost, do you exercise? He said, no, I don't exercise. My wife exercises religiously. I don't exercise. And he said, I want you to work out for 90 days. Don't make an appointment with anyone, because in 90 days, that's really where when you build habits, not just, fit in your daily routine physically, but mentally more than anything. So I love that you already started with that mental piece, and then you're building that accountability within them to say, where's your time going? Where do you have pockets to where maybe we can swap some things, or you can fill in that time with this that's going to help you reach that goal. So if we're translating these same strategies into the world of funding, guys, then what we're talking about is you're looking at your schedule for the next 90 days and you're saying to yourself, okay, are there maybe talk shows that you really don't need to be watching? In my case, right, it was reality TV, Love and Hip Hop, didn't need to be watching it. So I had to cut that out of my life. Thank you, Jesus. But you have to really identify, where is your time going, and where can you instead be doing things that are going to help you reach your goal? So that can be things like maybe sending out proposals on LinkedIn, right? Or maybe if you want to take it one step even simpler, How can, you know, start really optimizing your LinkedIn page, start really building those connections on LinkedIn. And within the next 90 days, really have a goal to maybe not secure. If you feel like securing a job within the next 90 days is too hard, personally, I think you're not challenging yourself enough. That's what I think. But if you feel like you need a more quote unquote attainable goal, start with just saying, you know what, within the next 90 days, I want to update my headshot. I want to optimize my LinkedIn profile, and I want to make 5 to 10 connections, right? And then go from there and build from there. But you need to give yourself attainable goals, and you need to give yourself accountability. I really love how, SJ, you talked about how you asked them, I need to see your journal. I need to see your planner. You're right there in their corner, and you're saying, hold on, you're not doing this by yourself, right? Because you trusted them. Initially, you were trusting your clients, and you said, go home, class dismissed. I'll see you next week. And hopefully you've done the work. And then you realize that's not working, because people need someone who's going to kind of be that kick in the butt, right? Who's going to tell them, I'm not just going to let you take it easy. You came to me, you made this investment, and now I'm going to make sure that you're holding up your end of the bargain, which is really what matters. And that's really why I feel people get coaches anyway, is because they know that on their own, they can't do it. Otherwise they would have. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you know, just sort of going back to what you were saying in terms of, you know, what that goal is and what unpacking that goal looks like for your audience, you know, they need to be, I mean, I love a paper and pen, I'll be honest with you. And if you're working through that process of those steps on yourself, by yourself, you just probably want to grab maybe like a paper and pen and write those things down. What are the things that I've got to do? We also use, and I know you use this too, there's a program called MindMeister, which kind of creates like a digital brain dump, like spider diagram. And I love it, because honestly, I wish I had that in the classroom when I was teaching like the subjects, so we could kind of move things around on the board and that sort of thing. But I love that, because you can put everything that's in your head into that program, and then you can kind of shuffle it around and you can see where things sit together. And, you know, you might be thinking about tasks that you want to be pulling together. That gives you that really, really great opportunity to do that. And if you don't mind, I'm going to carry on down the route of some of the programs that I use to help with this sort of process. And not all of these are things that I use with my clients, but some of them, like I use myself, I know that you use them too. So once I've kind of like done a brain dump in MindMeister, what I'm then going to do, and probably what's really relevant for your audience, is building some kind of like workflow, because you've got to know what you're doing when you sit down to do that work. Because particularly if you're in a job and you're coming home and you're tired and your brain is just like, I just want to watch Netflix. And you're like, right, I need to sit down for an hour and I need to get through these things. But you've got to know what it is that you need to get through so that you're not wasting your time. And I think if you've really, really, you know, planned that out into Asana, I do that probably like you do as well with my podcast episodes. I have a workflow for what I do every single day in my business, whether I'm writing like fitness programs for my client or recording podcasts like you do. And that just kind of really helps me. So when I sit down, I'm like, okay, these are the things that I've got to work through today. And I love that process. And I love that sort of, I just love not wasting that time where you just sat there and you're like, what shall I do today? Let's have a look at Instagram. And before you know it, like half an hour is gone and you're just thinking, well, I've just wasted all of this time. And particularly for us, if we've got children, you want to be super like productive with that time, because it's time away from your family. And if you're sat there scrolling through Instagram, I don't know about you, but I feel a sense of mum guilt anyway when I'm working. And that mum guilt is compounded if I'm not using my time productively.
100%. I love that you said that. And that's actually, I know we have really been talking about getting that support, right? Once you know what your workflow looks like, which I'm huge on, running 2 businesses, I have really had to hone in on where's my time going, where's my energy going, and what workflow what workflow works best for me. And the way kind of just so that you guys have an inside look on what that looks like for me. Monday, Tuesdays, I only work on things that have to do with the academy. So I don't touch anything that has to do with my funding business at all. No emails, nothing. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday nights and over the weekend, I will work on my funding business. But I'm very clear on, okay, what are my podcast days? Okay, what are the days that I'm, reaching out to sponsors or funders, whatever the case is. I'm super mindful of what needs to be done and when, and making sure that I'm not overlapping on things. Because if you're not creating those boundaries in your time, it's really easy to say, oh my gosh, I have this email, I have to respond. No, you have to create that boundary within yourself and also with the people that you're, with your peers or clients, whoever you're working with, so that they can understand today's not the day that she's working on that. I'm going to have to wait that 48-hour turnaround or whatever the case is. So having a workflow really helps you establish boundaries as well, right? And eventually, once you get to a point where your workflow is smooth and you've got that 90-day routine down and you're starting to generate income and all those cool things, you'll be able to get the support you need so that you don't have mom guilt because you're on Instagram, right? You won't have that stress and that anxiousness because all the pieces will have organization, if that makes sense. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And I also think, as in terms of just going back to some of the tools, one of the key things is if you're organizing yourself, you also have got to think about what's going on within your household as well. And you're going to need to have an element of organization to your household. Now, I'm quite an organized person. It's kind of what I do. My other half is not. Like, he's kind of like the fly by the seat of your pants kind of person. He's super laid back, super chilled. It's just kind of like, yeah, we'll do it when it's done. And this is where, for us as a family, because we were really struggling to communicate with each other what was going on, who was going to be where, what was happening. So I use Google Calendar to organize, like, when's Chloe, my daughter, going to her dance class, when she got her swimming lesson, when's the dentist, all of these things, all of these places that you have to be at specific times, those are in the Google Calendar. And that is the way I kind of organize my husband. I'll be really honest with you. That is how I organize him. So he knows what's going on, because we don't always, he's busy, I'm busy. We don't have the capacity to be on the phone to each other, texting each other all the time, that sort of thing. But I will put stuff into the calendar and it will remind him. It will remind him that in 2 hours' time, he's got to go to the dentist, or it will remind him that he's got to take Chloe to her dance class, something like that. And we're so lucky. This is the beauty of the age that we live in. And I know technology gets a bit of a bad rap, but actually we're so lucky because there's so many tools at our disposal that can help us to get organized, to get more efficient and more productive with the time that we have. I know I've said about Instagram and falling down the rabbit hole, but if you've got an iPhone, or I'm sure Android have the same thing, but there's settings on your iPhone that you can put on for you to be in work mode. So your phone isn't pinging distractions at you, or, you can put your phone into like a do not disturb mode. And I use that when my daughter comes home from school. I have an hour where it's just us, like playing in the garden, doing a catch up. And really, I guess what I'm talking about is like this time blocking, having blocks of time in your day. And I know time blocking is something that people talk about all the time. But for me, the way that I do time blocking is quite different. I get my clients to prioritize certain things. So we look at what is their priority in their home life, their relationship, their themselves, which is usually like their health and fitness goal, and then also their work. And we color code. So we use a color for each of those 4 things to block the time into a diary, an online calendar, whatever it is that they want to choose. And I love the way that we do that, because you can then open up your calendar and you can see where is your time going, like visually, because we love colors, like we're massive visual learners. You can see, oh my gosh, like I use red for my work because I want to make sure that I have not got a full diary of red, and I need to make sure that I use blue for my daughter. I want to make sure that I've got a good contrast between work and time with my family, and that's one of the ways that I do that.
I love that. Yeah, color color blocking. Yes, color blocking, but time blocking is huge for me as well. I do it in my planner. I feel like as a funding expert, I'm always on my computer. And so anytime that I can be off of my computer, it's perfect. Yes. So I have a journal and I definitely color code all of my times. Every Sunday, I sit down and I have like 2 hours at the end of the night after the kids are in bed. Sometimes I'll have a smoothie. Sometimes if I'm feeling adventurous, I'll have like a cup of wine, and I just kind of like decompress and really just think about where's my week going. And that's like, it's so enjoyable for me. I mean, talk about adulting, right? Like I'm just sitting there with my highlighter, just like, how's my week going? So what would be tip number 3 once we know our why, we've reverse engineered and we're using all of our resources, both digitally and non-digitally? Now, what would be step 3 in your process towards just having organization so that we can launch and scale our side hustles?
So I think, as you were saying, so we've got a goal, we've got clarity on that goal of what you want to do. You know what the action steps are, and it's then about taking those action steps and figuring out where you're going to put those in your blocks of time. And the thing that I think is important, because I think time blocking, you can find yourself like really being very, very regimented of, at 8 o'clock I'm doing this, and that, that's great in some ways, but let's get real. Like if you have children, if you're ill, if your car doesn't work, and then if that goes off, you're looking at your diary and you're going, I've got all of these things to do, but I can't do it all. So I actually think one of the key things is to actually think about like what the unexpected things could be. And we live on a farm, so there's loads of things that go wrong, and tractors break down, and there's always like some kind of drama. So one of the things that I always do is just really consider for the day, what are my must-dos? Like, what are the things I have to do? And what are the things like, do you know what? If I haven't done that pile of washing over in the corner, that's okay, and it's not the end of the world. But for me, what do I have to do? Well, I always have to do a podcast. I always have to write my clients' workout plans. Those are things that are non-negotiables. So one of the things that I really like to do when I am time blocking, as we were just saying, is to actually leave gaps, like white space in my planner. And one of our friends, she talks about bumper padding quite a lot, and that's what I kind of call it as well. It's like bumper padding the blocks of time that I've got, and giving myself a bit of space of, well, do you know what, if I don't get there quite exactly at 10:30, that's okay, I'll sit down at 10:45 and start my work block, kind of thing. So yeah, having like, and I think also it gives you some freedom. And if you're a creative, as I'm sure a lot of your audience are, if you're thinking about wanting to go, into the world of entrepreneurship, having some kind of like freedom and flexibility, because that's what we're trying to get, isn't it? We're trying to walk away from a job where somebody else is telling us what to do. We want that freedom, we want that flexibility. So we don't necessarily want to be like making our day really, really strict. So that's one of the reasons why I love to build in some blocks of time around things.
That was so good. I love that. Leave room for the unexpected, which of course is huge because we get sick. And sometimes, I know recently I had a situation this past week where my body shut down. Like I was burnt out. And that is very common with grant writers. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people leave. So leaving room for the unexpected. Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned your must-dos. I have a friend who, she says, my brain only works in like increments. So she can only have like 3 goals per week, and that's all she can do. And visionary, if that's all you can do, that's totally okay. You do whatever is within your capacity. I don't want you to feel like you are in competition with anybody, because you're not. it's really just about making these incremental steps and building these habits so that you can build the freedom that you want, and having that fundamental organization just placed and in place so that you can do that. So just to kind of wrap up here, what would be, once they have the must-dos, how do they know if they have gotten to a place where their organization is where it's supposed to be? How do you know that your life is kind of, quote unquote, as in order as it's going to be?
I love that. As in order as it's going to be. I think actually I think it's really actually about telling it's not going to be perfect, but it's kind of like this sense of, you get up in the morning, you're almost excited to do the things because you know like what you're supposed to do. There's such a great satisfaction in that. And I think it's just feeling like, for me, if I know that I've got everything like in place, it's not about balance, because I know people talk about like a work-life balance. There's no such thing. Like, you're going to have periods where you're pushing hard for something, and then other times when you're scaling back. But I think for me, particularly as a parent, I don't get mum guilt. Like, I know that I'm doing my work when I should be doing my work. I'm spending time with my daughter, spending time with Tim, my husband, and that my life kind of I feel content. And I'm not like on my phone while my daughter's there, or I'm not sat, trying to like look at my phone while we're cooking dinner or something like that. And I'm not in this sort of like sense of, I don't know how to describe it, like a hustle mode. And I think if you do have like a side, we say side hustle, if this is a side hustle, actually it's not about being in a hustle mode. It's actually about feeling like, I don't want to say control either, but feeling like you know what is going on, and that you know that you have dedicated time to each of the things that are your priorities. I think that's how I would describe it.
That's really good. And that's completely relatable as well, because I'm definitely straying away from that hustle mentality, because I do think that it's detrimental to our mindset. It's not sustainable. I was just having this conversation with my husband yesterday, to where I'm like, there is no sustainability in hustle, because you're constantly go, 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 go. And then there's no satisfaction at the end of the day. Because again, it's not sustainable. You're going to burn out. And then what happens when you burn out? You're starting from zero all over again. So SJ, these are awesome tips. Visionary. I'm going to, in the show notes, have all of the resources that SJ mentioned down below, as well as on the blog, so that you can check them out for yourselves. You can try them out. And I really want to hear your stories of how the next 90 days have changed for you. What have you been able to accomplish? I don't want you to just listen to this podcast. I really want you to take action and really start getting the needle going or moving on these things that you guys are constantly DMing me about. I'm afraid to reach out to an organization that I've volunteered for about this job opening. I'm afraid of kind of transitioning out of my job because I just don't feel like I have the time. Well, now you have these tools and you have these amazing tactful steps that you could take. So there's really no excuse at this point. So check out the show notes down below. SJ, tell my audience, where can they further connect with you? Where can they work with you? Where can they get to know more about you?
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you. So I have a podcast as well, like you do. My podcast is called Fit Productive Mum, and it's spelled British way, MUM. There on the podcast, I really address two key things, and you can kind of tell within the title. I solve the problem of time. So I share how to get organized. I dig into, the things that we've been sort of touching on today, talking about workflows, talking about meal plans, talking about organization, all of those kind of things. And also I do talk about the fitness aspect, of course, on the podcast, and dig into cycle thinking. And actually, for your female audience, when it comes to your workload, there's an awful lot that you can use in terms of your cycle to help you with, avoid burnout and that sort of thing. So definitely come and find me over on the podcast. I am on Instagram, Fit Productive Mum as well. And I would love to hear, as you said, like, what you're up to, what your challenges are over the 90 days and the successes that you have. So thank you so much.
So good, guys. Check out. Oh, that was my phone. So sorry. Check out all the links down below. Please be sure to connect with SJ past this episode. Visionary, thank you so much for being here today. We'll catch you in the next episode, and many blessings on you.